With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, chairs a Council of Ministers meeting to discuss the draft finance law for the year 2025. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has said that the national dialogue will launch, a new government will be formed by the end of the year, and that the opposition by 2 permanent members of the UN Security Council to the full membership of the State of Palestine in the UN reflects the absence of the international law. The International Observatory Western Sahara Resources Watch has described the judgment handed down by the Court of Justice of the European Union confirming the illegality of the trade agreement concluded between the Union and Morocco as a major victory for the people of Western Sahara. As Lebanese caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati called for an immediate ceasefire in Lebanon, the Israeli army pursued its pounding of Beirut's southern suburb, killing at least 23 people. Those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. Joining me today, my colleague Assia Bakar. Hi, Assia.
Hi, Mariam.
The President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, and Minister of National Defense, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, chairs a Council of Ministers meeting to discuss the draft finance law for the year 2025. The meeting is also dedicated to presentations on the health situation related to the diphtheria and malaria epidemic in the border areas in the south, the progress of structured mining projects, the conditions and procedures for the accreditation of private education and training institutions, in addition to files related to the daily life of citizens. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has affirmed that Algeria is committed to the path of positive change by remaining determined to realizing the dream of the martyrs of a democratic Algerian state capable of defending her sovereignty and protecting her citizens. During his interview with representatives of the national media, President Abdelmajid Tebboune expressed his willingness to fulfill the commitment he made to the Algerian people to protect the country and its independence, and by defending vulnerable people. The President said Algeria is on the right track and a lot of efforts are being made to allow the Algerian citizens to live in dignity. In this regard, he warned against lobbies that are trying to destabilize the country and show chaos, adding that the era of the Isaba or gang is over, although its residues still exist, but he insisted that the state will fight these lobbies relentlessly. He said attempts to destabilize Algeria still exist, but Algeria is on the lookout to confront them, thanks to the efforts of the National People's Army and the control mechanisms and digitalization set up by the Algerian state. As for forming a new government, the President said he is looking for competencies capable of fruitfully contributed to the building of the new Algeria, stressing that the government will be formed before the end of the current year.
الحكومة إن شاء الله إذا وفقنا الله عز وجل أنني نبحث على أكبر كفاءات وأحسن كفاءات في هذه البلاد هذه.
تكنوقراطية يعني؟
شيء بالضبط، يعني عندهم تجربة وقادرين يفيدوا البناء هذا، لأن أحزاب ما نمنعش أنا باش يكون واحد من الناس ذو كفاءة باش يكون منتمي لحزب الآخر، ماهوش لأنه منتمي لحزب نقصيه. أما الحملة الانتخابية أنا شاكر لهم الحملة اللي داروها وكذا، ولكن الشعب كله يعرف أنا كنت مترشح حر، ترشح في العهدة الأولى والعهدة الثانية، قلتها صراحة بدون ما نخفي على حد، أنا ترشح باسم الشبيبة هذه اللي أنا قوي فيها ونعطيها الصلاحيات وندخلها في الميدان السياسي وكذا، وباسم المجتمع المدني.
تغيير الحكومة سيكون مع نهاية السنة
قبل نهاية السنة.
قبل نهاية السنة.
مجرد ما يتم النقاش ربما، ولا حتى لما يتوضع قانون المالية في المجلس الشعبي الوطني نفكر باش ننطلق انطلاقة جديدة في 2025 إن شاء الله.
Meanwhile, the President of the Republic announced that the process of definitive digitalization of all sectors must be completed before the end of 2024 as part of the efforts to build a modern Algerian state, noting that bureaucracy remains a phenomenon of underdevelopment that must be eradicated.
أنا كنت محدد نهاية 24 نوصل للرقمنة نهائيا بما فيه بناء الداتا سنتر هذا تاعنا اللي يخليك أينما كنت ومهما كان القطاع عندك المعلومات آليا. تبقى الناس
كاين مقاومة سيدي الرئيس.
نعم.
كاين ريزيستانس، كاين مقاومة تاع
فيه مقاومة ماشي غير في البلدية. لما نبدا نراقب اليوم باش نشوف واحد لاباس عليه ولو موظف عنده مرتب محترم نشوفه يدي من حتى مدروس يبالي بور 10 ans de prison. اليوم بالرقمنه نقدر نفيق لان الرقمنه تعطيني القائمه نتاع الناس اللي استفادوا واش هو الوضع المالي تاعهم حتى نمنع منع بات اي واحد اللي لاباس عليه يقرب القوت ولا المساعده اللي نعطوها للمعوزين نعطوها للطبقه الهشه. مثلا بالنسبه للاقتصاد نفس الشيء، الجمارك راهم يمشوا بسرعه قويه في الرقمنه، مازال اليوم الجمارك مازال فيه بعض التصرفات اللي قانون الجنائي يحكم عليها، ولكن نقصت ما بقاتش كيما علاش قضينا على لي بورساك وقضينا على هذه وقضينا يعني كلها كانت ادوات لي بور كونتورني لا لوا.
The President affirmed that the phenomenon of smuggling that harms the national economy must stop because Algeria intends to create free trade exchanging zones with neighboring brotherly countries.
التهريب نقضي عليه أولا ماشي إلا بالقمع، ولكن أنا باش ندير مناطق حرة بيني وبين البلدان الشقيقة المجاورة، كل شيء يفوت من خلال الأسواق الحرة هذه avec des possibilités de comptabilité بقاش أنا الأمور هذه فوضوية ونوصل لها إن شاء الله. رانا بدينا في المنطقة الحرة مع شقيقة موريتانيا ونفوتوا مع الأشقاء في النيجر ودو زون دو ليبر إيشانج مع تونس شقيقة كذلك في انتظار تكون مع ليبيا ومع
كاين المنطقة الحرة العربية والإفريقية كذلك.
المنطقة الحرة العربية يعني رغم بعد المسافة بين الدول العربية من المفروض فيه تبادل تاع المنتوج. شيء آخر من المنطقة هذه لازليكا تاع الأفارقة يعني دول حدودية مع بعضها بعض وفيها اللي تنتج وفيها اللي تستهلك.
In order to protect Algeria from foreign interference and to thwart attempts to sow discord among the Algerian people, the President of the Republic assured that a serious national dialogue will be established by the end of 2025, beginning of 2026, after the revision of the laws relating to the bodies of the modern state.
نهار ننتهي من بناء صرح الدولة العصرية الجزائرية، وهذا اللي التزمت به أنا شخصيا وهذا اللي نشتغلوا فيه. من الناحية الاقتصادية ما باقيش كثير أنا على وشك. من الناحية المؤسساتية رانا انطلقنا في بعض المؤسسات اللي هي أسس الديمقراطية.
وهذا الحوار سيجري خلال سنة 2024 سيد الرئيس؟ 24
بقات فيها شهرين. أعتقد في نهاية 25 إن شاء الله بداية 26 لازم نحضر لها. ما هوش مهرجانات نتاع غوغاء واتهامات وهذه ومنابر لاستعراض العضلات ولا غيرها. هذه لفائدة الجزائر، فائدة الأجيال اللي راها صاعدة باش الجزائر تصبح دولة قوية اقتصاديا، قوية ثقافيا، قوية بشبابها وديمقراطية. هي تحاسب الناس على الديمقراطية، ما يحاسبوهاش الناس على الديمقراطية.
More details about the President's interview with Essia Bekar.
Regarding the legal text that will be revised before the national dialogue is launched, the President of the Republic cited the municipal and provincial codes as well as the law on political parties, which he pledged to develop in consultation with the parties. The President added that early local and legislative elections could take place if circumstances require it, but only once the municipal and provincial codes are endorsed.
فيه عمل أولي لازم نقوم به. أنا قلت لازم نشوف أولا الانتخابات المحلية لازم قانون البلدية يكون جاهز، لازم قانون الولاية يكون جاهز. فيه بعض الإخوان بعض الأحزاب وبعض الناس يعني نزهاء وطنيين طالبين مراجعة بعض البنود تاع قانون الانتخابات. فيه البعض اللي وصلوا طالبين يعني مراجعة بعض البنود نتاع الدستور فيما يخص لانية، فيما يخص هذه تفتحت كل اقتراحات، ما نقصي حتى واحد، نديروا الشيء اللي يفيد البلاد، اللي ما يفيدش البلاد ما ندخل في الغوغاء وفي كذا ما نمشي لهاش.
On the social plan, the president recalled his commitment to strengthening the purchasing power of citizens, fighting against inflation and strengthening the national production. At the economic level, the president of the republic affirmed that the construction of a solid national economy and the protection of Algeria against global fluctuations are among the state's priorities. Answering a question on the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline project linking Algeria to Nigeria via Niger, the president of the republic affirmed that the work continues and there are only 700 to 800 kilometers left out of the 4,000 kilometers of the project. The president of the republic said Algeria currently does not plan to join this organization, but her interest lies in joining the BRICS Bank, and Algeria will contribute with $1.5 billion, given that the BRICS Bank is the new development bank and is just as important as the World Bank.
احنا كنا باغيين ندخلوا المنظمة البريكس لأسباب معينة، لما شفنا إلى ما آلت إليه البريكس الأسباب هذه أصبحت غير واضحة. إذن الرغبة نتاعنا في الدخول للبريكس ما بقاتش نفس الرغبة اللي احنا كنا باغيين نفوتوا مع كتلة والمستقبل كشاف. رغبتنا والرغبة ما زالت قائمة هو أن دخولنا في بنك البريكس. بنك البريكس خلاص تم القبول ودخلنا، وربما نشارك $1.5 نشري أسهم، لأن بنك البريكس هو البنك الجديد للتنمية. C'est l'équivalent de la Banque mondiale. Et dont le capital est aussi important que celui de la Banque mondiale.
Regarding the association agreement with the European Union, the President of the Republic revealed that it will be revised in 2025 with flexibility and in a friendly spirit without entering into conflict with the EU. On the international plan, the President of the Republic called for a deep reform of the United Nations system and the Security Council, as well as the use of the right of veto, stressing the need to give the UN General Assembly more power. President Tebboune said the Zionist state will not stop with its massacres unless strict boundaries are imposed. He recalled that 144 countries have requested the full membership of the State of Palestine to the United Nations, to which the 2 permanent members of the Security Council are opposed, which reflects the absence of the international law that is replaced by the survival of the fittest law.
إذا ما وضعوش حد الاستعمال المفرط نتاع القوة من طرف الدولة الصهيونية، لومبرازمون اي بلوس كو بوسيبل. وهذه مش أنا اللي قلتها، قاعد نقولوها منذ سنين باش تمحي شعب كامل. اليوم راه في عشرات الآلاف مئات الآلاف اللي تموت، وراه الحرمة تاع الدول، وراه مجلس الأمن. يعني بالتقريب المؤسسات الدولية التي أنشئت من بعد الحرب العالمية الثانية حتى لا نرجع استعمال القوة مثل ما استعملها الجيش النازي ولا غيره، قضوا عليها. اليوم اللي عنده قوة ما كانش اللي يحاسبك، لكن في الجانب القوي، لكن في الجانب الضعيف قاع يحاسبوك.
هل برأيكم فشلت الأمم المتحدة في
الأمم المتحدة لازم مراجعة جذرية. أنا ما نشوفش علاش الجمعية العامة تاع الأمم المتحدة أقل سلطة من مجلس الأمن. 5 دول تتحكم في العالم، تخرج هاك ولا هاك يعطيك. ناخذ فلسطين 144 دولة طالبة باش فلسطين تكون عضو كامل في الأمم المتحدة. 5 تاع مجلس الأمن منهم 2 اللي رافضين، 3 قابلين. ده ما بقاش قانون دولي، هذا قانون القوي ياكل الضعيف.
Regarding France's position supporting the so-called autonomy plan in Western Sahara, the President of the Republic affirmed that France's support for the Moroccan occupation to seize Western Sahara is not new, and even the idea of the so-called autonomy plan is French and not Moroccan. He also noted that the decision to withdraw the Algerian ambassador to Paris has no connection with the visit that was scheduled to France. The President of the Republic recalled the position of the Algerian state, which demands historical recognition of the massacres committed by the French colonization in Algeria. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmejid Tebboune, described the calls of certain French parties for the revision of the 1968 agreement concerning the movement and residence of Algerians in France as a political slogan of an extremist minority that hates Algeria. Referring to the solid relations between Algeria and Russia, the President of the Republic indicated that the two countries share relations of friendship and mutual interest characterized by deep and historical ties. Over to you, Miriam.
Thank you, Essia. The President of the Republic, Abdelmejid Tebboune, has received several messages from head of state and the President of the EU Commission congratulating him for his re-election for a second term. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has congratulated the President of the Republic on his re-election for a second term. The President of the European Commission said that her election for a new term comes at an important stage for Algerian-European relations and their common interest, expressing the European Commission and her personal commitment to work together. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of Belgium, Mr. Alexander De Croo, the President of the Republic of Madagascar, Mr. Andry Rajoelina, the President of the Togolese Republic, Mr. Faure Gnassingbé, and the President of the Republic of Iraq, Mr. Abdelatif Jammeh Rashid, congratulated President Tebboune for his re-election, stressing their will to strengthen their country's relations with Algeria. Meanwhile, the Grand Duke Henry of Luxembourg also congratulated the President of the Republic. Over to you, Essia.
And Tunisians are heading to the polls today as polling stations across the country's 24 provinces are open to choose the President of the Republic. A total of 1,513 centers for 9,669 polling stations opened their doors for the first presidential election after the 2022 constitution. 3 candidates are running for the presidential election, namely outgoing President Kais Saied, as well as the 2 politicians, namely Souhair Maghzaoui and Ayashi Zamo. Abroad, 317 centers and 408 polling stations have already opened since October 4th. The Independent High Authority for Elections mobilized 42,000 agents and presidents of voting centers in Tunisia and 2,000 others abroad. According to the latest statistics, some 9,753,217 voters are expected to go to the polls, including 50.4% women and 49.6% men, while the electoral abroad amounts to 642,810 people. Miriam, back to you.
Algeria has expressed its satisfaction with the rulings made public by the Court of Justice of the European Union in a press release issued by the Foreign Affairs Ministry concerning the trade agreements concluded by Morocco and the EU, which illegally including the Sahrawi territories. Algeria held the judgment published on October 4th by the European Union Court of Justice, confirming the illegality of the trade agreements concluding with the Kingdom of Morocco in violation of the inalienable rights of the Sahrawi people over the natural resources of the non-autonomous territory of Western Sahara. The press release stressed that these rulings confirm the doctrine of the United Nations, which enshrines the sovereignty of the peoples of non-autonomous territories over the natural resources and the imperative of ensuring the protection of these resources against any plundering or predation to which they may fall victim, as is the case of Western Sahara amply demonstrates. The press release highlighted that these judgments of the Court of Justice of the European Union recall the undeniable truths inherent in the Sahrawi cause, including the legal status of this territory, the legal status of the Polisario Front, and the inalienable and imprescriptible right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination. Over to you, Essia.
The International Observatory Western Sahara Resource Watch has described the judgments handed down by the Court of Justice of the European Union, confirming the illegality of the trade agreements concluded between the Union and Morocco as a major victory for the people of Western Sahara. The observatory stated in a press release that this is a major victory for the people of Western Sahara. At a time when international law is under pressure, it is essential that the EU follows its own court and stops collaborating with the occupier through illegal trade trade agreements. A member of the observatory said that it was now time for the EU to respect the decisions of its own court. She argued that Western Sahara is not Morocco and cannot be included in the EU's negotiations with the occupier, calling for all private companies involved in Morocco's plundering of the territory's resources to respect the rule of law and immediately end their involvement in Africa's last colony. She added that foreign companies working for Morocco in Western Sahara must be fully aware of the legal grey area in which they are operating. More details with Miriam Barshi.
The cancellation by the European Union's High Court of two trade agreements concluding between Morocco and the EU have marked a turning point in the Sahrawi people's struggle against the Moroccan occupier. The international press headlines described the decision as a reassertion of the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination and to exercise permanent sovereignty over its natural resources, but also as a hard blow dealt to Morocco. The daily El País highlighted the main reason for the cancellation of the agreement, stating that the court concluded that the 2019 EU-Morocco trade agreements on the fisheries and agricultural products reached without the consent of the people of Western Sahara.
Mauritania's chairman of the Personal Data Protection Authority, Mohamed Lamine Ould Sidi, is paying a 4-day visit to Algeria, accompanied by members and executives. You still listen to Radio Algeria International and to the Middle East now, as Lebanese caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati called for an immediate ceasefire in Lebanon. The Israeli occupation pursued its pounding of Beirut's southern suburb, killing at least 23 people. According to Lebanese authorities, over 90 other people were wounded in overnight bombardments, the heaviest since the Israeli occupation launched its acts of aggression on Lebanon nearly 2 weeks ago. Israel's attacks on the capital southern have caused serious damage and forced the population to flee the fighting area. In a statement carried by the national news agency, Lebanon's caretaker premier stressed that an immediate cessation of hostilities was the only way of easing the sufferings of the Lebanese people. He also called for the implementation of Resolution 1701 to pave the way for the return of refugees. Back to you, Miriam.
That's it for today's news bulletin. Stay tuned on Radio Algeria International.
قصف عن المحاضرة أشلاء أطفال ملقاة على الأرض، جلهم من الأطفال والنساء.
Listeners, and welcome on our waves. The Palestine Festival of Literature is a cultural initiative committed to combating colonialism in the 21st century through literature. And to have a clear insight about this festival, we have with us from London Omar Robert Hamilton, co-founder of the Palestine Festival of Literature. Omar, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Omar, I've seen the literary activities held as part of the festival, and I personally find them very interesting and of great service to Palestinian literature and culture. But I want you to tell our listeners about the Palestine Festival of Literature. What is this festival?
It's an annual festival. It takes place in cities across historic Palestine. It's been running since 2008. So we've done, I think, 13 festivals. And the idea is basically we bring a selection of international authors to Palestine. We meet in Amman first, and then they cross the Allenby Bridge to go into the West Bank. And over the course of a week, the international authors will combine with Palestinian authors to do free public events, and a different one in a different city each night. So it's a sort of traveling festival. So, for example, the first night could be in Ramallah, and then in Jerusalem, and then in Bethlehem, and then in Haifa. And so over the course of a week, we'll do a series of free public events, and then also the visiting authors, the international authors, during the day, we organize for them meetings, tours of relevant sites inside the cities, meetings with artists and activists, and to try and paint them a picture of the many different ways in which the colonization of Palestine is happening simultaneously, and all the different methods that Israel employs all at once. So, our sense is that to understand what's happening, it's not enough just to see the West Bank. It's not enough just to see Jerusalem. You have to see what's happening in Ramallah. You have to see what's happening in Nablus. You have to see what's happening in Hebron, in Haifa, in Jerusalem. And together, they all kind of make a picture. Of course, we're not able to go to Gaza. The only way in is through Egypt or through Israel. And we managed once in 2012, but since then it's been impossible. So we do the best we can in the other Palestinian territories to kind of create a picture.
Omar, what are the main goals of the Palestine Festival of Literature?
The main goals, it has twofold goals. I mean, on the inside, I think we've always said that one of our goals is breaking the cultural siege on Palestine and on Palestinians. They have been made very isolated. They're very regionally isolated, of course, from their neighbors. And they're, getting into Palestine is not straightforward and it's not easy. So on the one hand, it's, staging an event there that is of a world quality and brings authors to, the readers that they have in Palestine. And then on the other hand, when we are curating international authors that we invite, we try to think about authors whose work would already intersect with what they're seeing with what they then go on to see in Palestine. So, for example, we would bring now authors from America who, maybe they're black, or they are native writers, or they work on surveillance, or they do work on drone technologies, or we would invite a South African author, or we would invite, recently, say, an Ethiopian author who's written a novel about anti-colonial struggles in Ethiopia. And so we try and invite authors who, when they come to Palestine and they see what's happening in Palestine, it also connects with the work that they're already doing and the expertise that they already have. So that the hope being that then they go away, and when they produce new work, it's also about then connecting how the occupation and the colonization of Palestine is connected to the processes of capitalism and colonization that are ongoing in other parts of the world. And it's not just a kind of strange, exceptional place that is distinct from other political and technological and economic processes going on in other countries and other places, but that they're all kind of connected within the global web of capitalist colonialism that we all still live within today.
Omar, what's generally the reaction of authors who visit the Palestinian territories for the first time?
People are often surprised, I think, and shocked that it's worse than they imagined it was. I think, or a lot of the time, that it's a sort of realization that, I don't know, I mean, I certainly think that what happens is they are all very activated. When they go home, they want to be involved, they want to work, they want to work out how they can be involved in the future liberation of Palestine somehow. I mean, there's very few authors that come back and are not moved quite deeply by what they kind of go through and motivated to work. And yeah, I mean, I think everybody reacts in a different way depending on how they grew up, what information they thought they had, what kind of, ideological context they had inhabited before. Some people are less surprised than others. If you take a poet like Natalie Diaz, who's a Mojave language poet, she's not surprised by what she sees there because she has seen the same thing happen to her people across America. But so each author definitely reacts in their own personal way, but definitely a uniform response has always been that, that they want to work out how they can then go home and use whatever platform or voice they have to become part of the cause somehow.
Yeah. Omar, for you, what's the importance of cultural activities, notably literature, in raising awareness about causes of justice, notably the Palestinian cause?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to talk about that right now, right? When it seems like anything that we do doesn't matter and that the Israelis are just going to keep on killing people in Gaza without anything stopping them. So it is hard to say right now, I said, but, I think that, the thing that we think that we believe in, or the thing that I tell myself that we believe in, is that ultimately the path to Palestinian liberation, or is the same as the path to all of our liberations, right? Where it's like we're all to some degree caught within the machine of capitalism